There's a silence that exists only in places designed for the dead. It's not the peaceful quiet of a library or the soft hush of snowfall. It's a heavy, pressing silence, like the air itself is holding its breath. Crematoriums, funeral homes, mortuaries, these places are built to be respectful, dignified, and sterile. But at night, when the staff goes home and only one person remains to watch over the building, the dignity fades. The sterility cracks, and the silence is broken by sounds that shouldn't exist. The soft click of a cold storage door unlatching, the distant murmur of a voice from an empty viewing room, the low rumble of an oven turning on by itself at 3 in the morning. Most night attendants at these facilities don't last long, not because of the morbid nature of the work. You get used to the idea of death. You get used to the paperwork, the procedures, the respectful handling of remains. But you never get used to the feeling that something in the building is still, present, that the dead aren't as still as they should be. Tonight, we're walking the empty hallways of 3 different crematoriums and funeral homes. We're sitting in the night attendant's chair, listening to the hum of the ventilation. And we're hearing 3 true accounts from people who took the job for the quiet and left with. Stories that still wake them up at 3 a.m., turn down the lights, listen to the silence. And whatever you do, don't look at the cold storage door for too long. I'm your night attendant. This first story comes from a man named Leonard, a retired factory worker who took a part-time job as a night attendant at a small, family-owned crematorium in rural Ohio. The facility was called Green Acres Memorial, a modest, single-story building surrounded by cornfields. Located about 10 miles outside the nearest town, Leonard's job was simple. Arrive at 8 p.m., do a walkthrough of the building to make sure everything was secure, check the temperature logs for the cold storage unit, and then spend the rest of the night in the small office, reading or watching the security cameras until the morning staff arrived at 6 a.m. The pay was decent, and Leonard, a widower, appreciated the solitude. On his first night, the day manager, a brisk woman named Francine, walked him through the facility. She showed him the cremation retorts, the preparation room, the small viewing chapel, and finally, the cold storage. The cold storage was a walk-in cooler, the kind you'd see in a restaurant, but lined with stainless steel shelves designed to hold the deceased awaiting cremation. Francine opened the heavy door and gestured inside. The room was empty, the shelves bare and gleaming under the cold fluorescent light. "This door," Francine said, her voice dropping slightly, "needs to stay closed and latched at all times. The temperature has to remain constant. If the door is open, the alarm will sound on the panel in the office. But more importantly," she paused, looking Leonard directly in the eyes, "if you find this door open during your walkthrough, do not go inside. Do not look inside. Just close it firmly, latch it, and walk away. Do you understand?" Leonard nodded, assuming it was a safety protocol about the cold air or the alarm system. He didn't ask questions. For the first few weeks, the job was exactly as advertised, quiet, peaceful even. Leonard would do his rounds, check the cameras, and settle into the office with a thermos of coffee and a Louis L'Amour paperback. The cold storage door remained firmly closed. Then, one night in late autumn, around 1:30 a.m., he was doing his second walkthrough. As he turned the corner into the back hallway, he stopped dead. The cold storage door was wide open. A plume of frigid air rolled out into the hallway, fogging in the warmer air. The alarm panel in the office hadn't made a sound. Leonard stood there, frozen, remembering Francine's words, "Do not go inside. Do not look inside." His curiosity, however, was a stubborn thing. He took a step closer. He peered around the doorframe into the cold storage unit. The room was not empty. On the farthest shelf, shrouded in a white sheet, was a body. Leonard knew the schedule. There were no remains scheduled to be in cold storage that night. The last cremation had been performed 2 days ago, and the next intake wasn't until tomorrow morning. Yet there it was. A human shape under a crisp white sheet. He stared at it, his breath catching, then the shape moved. A slow, deliberate rise and fall, like someone taking a deep, shuddering breath. Leonard stumbled backward, his shoulder hitting the doorframe. The sheet rustled. A hand, pale and thin, slipped out from under the fabric and gripped the edge of the shelf. Leonard slammed the door shut and fumbled with the heavy latch. He pressed his back against the cold metal, his heart hammering. He heard nothing from inside, no movement, breathing, just the hum of the cooler's compressor. He waited a full 5 minutes, then slowly opened the door again. Just a crack. The room was empty. The shelf was bare. The sheet was folded neatly at the foot of the shelf. He closed the door, latched it, and walked quickly back to the office. He didn't sleep that night. When Francine arrived at 6 a.m., he told her what he'd seen. She didn't look surprised. She just sighed and poured herself a cup of coffee. "That happens sometimes," she said quietly. "We had a man here about 10 years ago, a John Doe. No family, no name.
Ice.
He was cremated, but no one ever claimed his ashes. They're still in the storage closet. Some nights he gets lonely. He goes back to the cold storage. He waits for someone to find him, to acknowledge him, to remember he existed. If you look at him, he knows. He wants you to come inside. To keep him company, that's why we don't look." Leonard finished his shift, but he never felt comfortable in that hallway again. He started leaving the office light on in the hallway, and he never ever opened the cold storage door during his rounds. He just checked the temperature gauge from the outside. He told me that sometimes, late at night, he'd hear a soft rustling from behind the metal door, like sheets being adjusted, like someone trying to get comfortable in the cold. Our second story comes from a woman named Yvonne, a nursing student who worked the night shift at a large suburban funeral home to help pay for her education. The funeral home, called Rest Haven, was a sprawling complex with multiple viewing rooms, a chapel, a preparation area, and a crematorium in a separate building out back. Yvonne's job was primarily administrative, answering late-night phone calls from grieving families, preparing paperwork for the next day's services, and doing a security walkthrough every 2 hours. She was a logical, science-minded person. Death was a biological process, nothing more. The funeral home was just a building. She didn't believe in ghosts. On her first night, the senior night attendant, a tired-looking man named Gerald, showed her the ropes. When they passed by viewing room B, a medium-sized room with floral carpet and rows of upholstered chairs, Gerald stopped. "This room," he said, "has a quirk. Sometimes between 2 o'clock and 4 a.m., the intercom in here will turn on by itself. You'll hear a voice. A woman's voice. She'll call out a name. Not a name you'll recognize, just a name. If you hear it, do not respond. Do not go into the room. Just keep walking and finish your rounds. She'll stop after a few minutes." Yvonne laughed. "A ghost with an intercom system." Gerald didn't laugh. He just looked at her with tired, serious eyes. "Just follow the rule," he said. For the first month, Yvonne heard nothing. She did her rounds, passed viewing room B, and heard only the hum of the HVAC. Then, one night in early December, around 2:45 a.m., she was walking down the corridor toward the administrative wing when she heard it. A soft crackle of static, then a click. The intercom speaker in the ceiling of the hallway came to life, and a voice, faint and distant like an old radio transmission, spoke a single word. Margaret. Yvonne froze. She looked at the door to viewing room B. It was slightly ajar, and a faint, flickering light was visible inside, as if a candle was burning. She knew there were no candles in the viewing rooms, just dimmable electric sconces. She took a step toward the door. The voice came again, clearer this time. Margaret, where are you? I'm waiting. Yvonne's hand reached for the door handle. She stopped herself. She remembered Gerald's rule. Do not go into the room. She turned away and continued walking down the hallway. As she walked, the voice followed her, crackling from speaker to speaker along the corridor. Margaret, please. I know you're here. I can hear your footsteps. Why won't you answer me? Yvonne walked faster. She reached the administrative office and closed the door behind her. The voice stopped. The next morning, she asked Gerald about the name Margaret. He went pale. He pulled out a thick, leather-bound logbook from a locked drawer. He flipped to a page from 15 years ago. There was a record of a service held in viewing room B for a woman named Margaret Holloway. She had died in a car accident. Her husband, a man named Arthur, had been so grief-stricken that he sat in the viewing room for hours after the service, talking to her body, begging her to come back. He died 6 months later of a heart attack in that same viewing room. He had been sitting in the front row calling her name. Arthur's still here, Gerald said quietly.
Oh.
He's still waiting for Margaret. And sometimes he tries to use the intercom to find her. If you answer if you go into the room, he might mistake you for her, and he'll never let you leave. Yvonne never walked past viewing room B alone again. She always took the long way around. She told me that sometimes on quiet nights, she can still hear a faint voice on the edge of the intercom static, calling a name that isn't hers. Our final story takes us to a remote crematorium in the Scottish Highlands. A facility called Glenlock Crematorium nestled in a valley surrounded by misty hills and ancient pine forests. The story comes from a man named Callum, a former soldier who took the night attendant job because he wanted solitude and didn't mind the morbid setting. He was a practical man, hardened by war, and he believed in what he could see and touch. The crematorium was a modern facility, but it had a strange feature. One of the two retorts, the industrial ovens used for cremation, was an older model, a legacy unit that was rarely used except during busy periods. It was kept in a separate room at the back of the building. The door to that room was always kept locked. Callum was given a set of keys on his first day by the facility manager, a Door Scotsman named Mr. McCrae. McCrae pointed to a specific key, old and tarnished. That's for the old retort room, he said. You'll never need to go in there. The unit is offline. It's not connected to the gas line. It's just storage. But there's a rule. Every night at exactly 3 a.m., you'll hear a sound from that room. A low rumble, like the oven is turning on. It's not. It's just the old pipes settling. Do not go into that room when you hear the sound. Do not unlock that door. Just ignore it. Do you understand? Callum nodded, though he found the specificity of the warning odd. For the first 2 weeks he heard nothing. Then, on a foggy November night at exactly 3 a.m., he heard it. A low, vibrating rumble. like a gas burner igniting. It was coming from the direction of the old retort room. He sat in his office, listening. The rumble grew louder, steadier. He could feel the vibration through the floor. Then it stopped. Silence. His curiosity gnawed at him. The next night, same thing. 3 a.m. The rumble. He decided to investigate. He took the tarnished key and walked down the dark hallway to the old retort room. The door was cold to the touch. He pressed his ear against it. The rumble was louder here, a deep, hungry hum. He inserted the key and turned the lock. The door swung open. The room was dark, lit only by the faint glow of the control panel on the old retort. The panel was active. Lights blinked. A digital display read. Cycle in progress. 47% complete. Callum's blood ran cold. The oven was offline. Disconnected. There was no gas. There was no power except for the panel's backup battery. Yet the temperature gauge on the display was climbing. 800 degrees, 900 degrees, 1,000 degrees. And through the small, heat-resistant viewing window in the retort door, he saw a faint, flickering orange glow. Something was burning inside. He stepped closer, against every instinct screaming at him to run. He peered through the window. Inside the oven, shrouded in flame, was a shape, a human shape, sitting upright. Its head was turned toward the window, and its eyes burning, empty sockets were looking directly at him. A voice crackled from a small speaker on the control panel. It was a distorted, metallic voice, like a recording played through fire. It said, "You are not the operator, but you will do. The cycle must complete. Step inside." Callum stumbled backward, slamming the door shut. He fumbled with the key, locking it, and ran back to the office. He didn't sleep. He sat there, listening to the rumble until it stopped at 4 a.m. The next morning, he told McCrae what he'd seen. McCrae's face turned ashen. He sat down heavily. 20 years ago, he said, there was an operator, a man named Fergus. He was unwell. He believed the dead could be brought back if the cremation was interrupted at the precise moment. He would stop the cycle, open the door, and try to pull them out. One night, he climbed inside himself. The door closed. The cycle started. He burned alive. Ever since, on nights when the veil is thin, the old retort tries to finish what Fergus started. It needs an operator. It needs someone to complete the cycle. If you had stayed, it would have pulled you in. Callum quit that day. He moved to the city, took a job in a warehouse. Told me that sometimes when he's near an industrial oven or even a fireplace, he can hear a faint rumble. He smells something burning. He walks away. Quickly. 3 crematoriums, 3 night attendants, 3 encounters with the dead who refused to stay still. Leonard at Green Acres, who saw a body breathe in the cold storage and learned that some souls just want to be remembered. Yvonne at Rest Haven, who heard a grieving husband's voice on the intercom, still calling for his wife after 15 years. And Callum in the Scottish Highlands, who looked into an oven that wasn't supposed to work and saw something looking back. The death industry attracts a certain kind of person. You have to be comfortable with silence, with finality, with the physical reality of mortality. But these stories remind us that finality is sometimes an illusion, that the dead don't always go quietly. They leave echoes in cold storage doors, in intercom speakers, in the glowing heart of an old cremation oven. And the night attendants, the quiet guardians of these liminal spaces, are the ones who hear those echoes. They're the ones who learn the rules. They're the ones who pay the price when they break them. If these stories gave you a new appreciation for the daytime, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and ring the bell. We walk the empty hallways of the world every week. Now, tell me in the comments, which of these 3 crematorium encounters would make you quit on the spot? And have you ever worked in a place where the dead seemed less than restful? Read every single one? The comments section on this channel is a logbook of the strange and the terrifying. Until next time, respect the dead. Follow the rules. And if you hear a door open that should stay closed, don't look inside. Just close it and walk away.